Hey, good morning, everyone out there. My name's Jason Miller. It's good to see everyone. We've got folks on the call here. We've got Barton that's standing by. We'll get through everything today, and we appreciate you joining us. And we're excited to talk about how we're going to maximize the impact of digital process automation and really talk about go-to-market strategy. For those of you who I have not met before, it's good to see you. My name's Jason Miller. I am head of pre-sales here at the Americas, stationed out of the Chicago area. I think some of you I may have met while we were in the Chicago event here just recently. It's good to see you again. Let's talk a little bit about Creatio. For those of you who may be new to Creatio, Creatio is a low-code, no-code platform that's really focused on helping customers drive your own automation and having that ability to have the freedom to own your own automation and provide industry-specific workflows and an industry-leading, Gartner-leading CRM practice on top of it. And if we think about it, Creatio has an idea of one platform, giving you the ability to orchestrate business processes across everything that you would want to do within your organization. Now, at the core of this, we have our CRM or our BPM Studio product. And BPM Studio is the low-code, no-code engine that runs everything else. On top of that, on our one platform, we have built our CRM tool for sales, service, marketing. You can find us listed on the Gartner Magic Quadrants for all of these pieces. We've also built a lot of industry-specific workflows. I had an industry executive ask me recently, goes, well, this looks like Visio. What's the difference between Visio and Studio? And I was very frank and I answered, well, in Visio, you can draw a process. In Studio, you execute processes. You link things together to help drive end-to-end process automation, to help speed up and make your day-to-day life even easier. We also have a variety of templates and connectors that are available via our marketplace. Some of the common applications that you interact with every day. Creatio has the opportunity and ability to link into those applications as well to make the end-to-end process even more streamlined and more efficient. When we talk about the freedom to automate any business process anywhere, it really is just that. No special skills are needed. Again, if you can build a process in Visio, you can execute and build processes in Creatio. We really offer the ability to not only customize, but configure your way to successful deployment. Building applications without a single line of code and helping drive transparency across the processes and the organizational needs is really one of the things that Creatio focuses on. Additionally, from a transparency standpoint, all of our pricing and everything is readily available on our website. If you ever have any questions about that, feel free to ask, but we put it all out there for you. We also believe in having a universe of composable apps. A lot of those are on our marketplace as well. We've got the ability to quickly and easily create point solutions through our no-code, low-code solution to help solve some of the most complex business processes that you're going to come across every single day. I want to shift topics for 1 second. If you haven't heard already, we're sitting down with Steve Wozniak, and you're like, Steve Wozniak, who's that? The co-founder of Apple and our CEO have recently sat down, and you're going to get a chance to listen in on that conversation coming up on October 4th. I highly encourage you to get your cell phones out, click on that QR code right now. Get registered for this. It's an event you're not going to want to miss. When we talk about low code and no code, Creatio has literally written the book on how to take low code and no code and make this a part of your day-to-day lives. You're going to hear Steve talk about a lot of things like how we are at this nexus, the need for rapid change in business applications, and the need for having the ability to have more people, not just IT folks, participate in that development event. And we're going to hear some of that same messaging today. And I'd like to go ahead and introduce Barton. Barton is the president of ISM CRM Consulting. Barton, how are you today, sir?
I'm very happy to be a part of this webinar, Jason.
Very good, very good. We will turn the show over to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, and good morning or good afternoon or good evening to all of you. It's with great pleasure that I have the opportunity to speak with you today. So this is an interesting topic, and it's one that it's a very challenging title, how to maximize the impact of digital process automation on your go-to-market strategy. In order to really understand the answer to that, we have to get into something that's very important in today's marketplace, and that's the concept of digital disruption. But before I get ahead of myself, if I could go to the next slide, let me formally introduce myself. I've been around for about 37 years now, and one of the first of 3 inductees into the Hall of Fame with Tom Siebel and Pat Sullivan. I'm a prolific writer, author of 3 books, and the one I guess I'm most proud of is the work that I do in philanthropy with various people around the world. While I'm on that topic, I would be remiss not to acknowledge all of the work that our friends at Creatio have done to help those in Ukraine with humanitarian aid and assistance in what is a long and devastating crises in the country. So I just want to thank Creatio for all that you're doing. Next slide, please. We've been around for 37 years, but the first 25 years of our history really was in the CRM space. In 2010, more or less, we branched out because I wrote the book Social CRM, and I thought it was important to talk about how do you leverage the insight that you can gain from communities, digital customer communities in your CRM. And so we started to build digital customer communities. We built many of them for many companies, just a way of listening and the voice of the customer at all times. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later. And then the last 3 years, I'm very focused on the metaverse as the next paradigm shift as we move into engaging with our customers in a way that they want to engage versus the way that we would like to engage. And I'll talk again more about that later. Next slide. I've had the pleasure of doing this with some of the world's best companies. I'm deeply honored that these companies have opted to use ISM's skills and excellence to drive their particular projects. And for those, next slide, that are wanting to tweet during today's presentation, I put down Creatio, hashtag Creatio 2022, if that would be helpful. So now let's turn to today's topic, and that is, again, how to maximize the impact of digital process automation on your go-to-market strategy. And really what I want to introduce first is how to thrive in a world of digital disruption, because you'll see I'm going to come around with digital process automation being the chief tool to help drive disruption. So you'll see the loop. I'll close the loop in a minute, but we got to open it and talk about how to thrive in a world of digital disruption. You know, Clayton Christensen from the Harvard Business School started the whole concept of kind of disruption. He wrote the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, and he basically said that when new technology causes great firms to fail and the need to stay on top of technology in order to survive. And I look at these companies that you see on the screen, you know, think for a moment about these disruptors and the impact that each one of them has had on both consumers as well as on their competition. And imagine for a moment if you were BlackBerry and then all of a sudden, you know, Apple comes along, or if you were Blockbusters and all of a sudden Netflix comes along, or if you were Borders Books and all of a sudden Amazon comes along, if you were General Motors and all of a sudden Tesla comes along, if you were, you know, a leading hotel chain and all of a sudden Airbnb comes along, if you were AT&T, Bell Labs, and all of a sudden Cisco comes along. These are companies that have literally cut the legs off of some of the greatest companies in the world. I go to the next slide, please. And so what I conclude is you need to transform to stay in the game. And this is just a lesson that Netflix has taught to Blockbuster. And this is a lesson that Uber taught to the yellow cabs. And this is a lesson that digital cameras taught to, you know, Kodak. This is a lesson that smartphones has taught to the camera world. And it's very interesting. My feeling is if you don't have the ability to stay and transform in the game, really you become a member of the Smithsonian Museum of here in Washington, D.C., where I'm located. And I put this slide up here because I want to show you how swift the fall can be. So Blockbuster was a multi-billion-dollar business in 2008, $5 billion. And in 5 years, between 2008 and 2012, 4 years even, they went from $5 billion to bankruptcy. And that's because Netflix just took over the entire market. So the question becomes really, you know, how do you make sure that you are digitally ahead of the pack and leveraging technology effectively so you can stay in the game? Next slide, please. And that's why perhaps all of us should take notice when we get this type of a forecast that about half of this Standard & Poor's Fortune 500 companies are said to be replaced in the next decade because of digital disruption. I mean, it's just something we should really think about. Now, the good news, next slide, is that technology can help you transform. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the leading technologies. I would like to call them digital technology disruptors. And I'm going to briefly touch on three, digital touch on 8, focus on 3. But the key point here is I'm of the belief that technology really plays a role in making sure that you are a digital disruptor, stay ahead of your game, and really survive in the long term. Okay, so let's take a peek at the top 8 technology disruptors. As I said, I'm going to go 1 through 5 quickly, and I'm going to slow down a little bit on 6 and 7, and then I'm really going to focus on 8 because that's the topic of today's discussion. So some of the digital disruptors: artificial intelligence, machine learning. We've all seen it in things like health apps, speech apps like Siri, language translation like Google Translate. We see it in automation vehicles, but we're really applying those in at least the business world to lead qualification and lead scoring. We now have chatbots that we can use for customer service. We can do sales forecasting based on customer behavior. These are very, very much a part of how we do business today. And in fact, as Jason alluded to earlier on, they've even built AI into and ML into some of the Creatio 8 Atlas application and platform toolset. The next one is the Internet of Things, a network of connected physical objects embedded with sensors. They could be beacons, they could be RFIDs, they could be digital signage or other. But they're used for predictive equipment maintenance, so to know when a machine is likely to, to have a problem or needs to be maintained. Tracking of objects and pallets, so you can find out where things are at all times. Smart warehousing is a really big application on IoT. And then just the smart stores. So the ability to really kind of move things around the store and know where people are and know what they're looking for. The next one is 5G. And that one's really very important. A lot of people underestimate the importance. So today's 4G, and as many of the world is still using 4G, delivers about 50 to 75 megabits per second download, throughput. The 5G brings that up from 50 to 75 megabits to 1 gigabit throughput on the downlink. And that's the ability now on a cell phone of speeds faster than 100 times what they were under the 4th generation. The 6th generation has now already begun. It's being discussed, and that's going to move the throughput from 1 gigabyte to 10 gigabytes. So we're going to get a 10-fold increase in the next 4 or 5 years. These are very important to things like manufacturing and smart cities, or the whole metaverse that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But what they do is they deliver obviously faster connectivity, extreme bandwidth density, and they're also ultra low latency, so you can really, get effective communications. The 4th one is that of blockchain. It's been bantered around quite a bit. Think of it more than anything as a decentralized database technology. So it's going to store data in its database, and it has things like digital ledgers of transactions that are maintained by a network of global computers, making it difficult to hack or alter. So you stick data inside the blockchain, and then it gets duplicated or replicated, and it becomes a record that's being used in smart contracts. It also forms the data structure for Web 3.0 and the whole new metaverse that's emerging. And the last one I just want to touch on before I focus on the last 3 is quantum computing. And that one's a little bit further out, but boy, is that going to be revolutionary. So this is the concept of harnessing the collective properties of quantum states to perform calculations. And the one that's always stuck in my mind is you can do in 4 minutes using quantum computing what the most sophisticated supercomputers do in 10,000 years. I mean, it's a whole new paradigm shift. 158 times faster than today's most sophisticated supercomputers. And that will play its role, if you will, in the smart cities, in metaverse, in a variety of different applications that we're going to be applying as we move forward in our increasingly digital world. But let me focus on the last 3 with a particular focus on no code. So if we could go to the next page, I'm going to talk about digital communities for a minute. And here I think you're all kind of familiar with the power of online meetings. We work with Zoom, or in this case, GoToMeeting. But these are just, it's a way of doing business, and everybody's become accustomed to it. It's even become a vocabulary word. I'll Zoom you at 5 o'clock. Next slide, please. We also have worked with the internal meeting. So things like Slack, for example, or even within Creatio, you have an internal community. So we have the power of internal communities. And lastly, what we're now building on is the power of external digital communities. So the way I like to look at this, and I'm going to use the example of Mobile Connect. Mobile Connect is part of ExxonMobil, the big oil field services company. And we built their Mobile Connect back in 2013. It's a very important part of how they go to market with leads and new customers and nurturing existing customers and engagement. I'll just tell you the story. And I think it's just very interesting for digital disruption. So think of the digital, I always call it a digital hotel. Think of the Hyatt Regency, for those of you that might know the Hyatt. And I always think about Embarcadero in California, one of the first Hyatts that looked very beautiful. It was tiered with multiple layers as you went upstairs. So let's go to the next slide. In the base of the Hyatt was a lounge. And the lounge is where all digital community members could go and can go for ExxonMobil. There's many thousand lubrication engineers that belong to the community. And they post new ideas, they respond to forums, they take quizzes, they answer polls. And, you know, we can kind of joke, but they have a virtual drink and they just kind of talk with each other and get to know each other. And this can be done in multiple languages, real time, so you can have multiple languages going on inside the community. If you go on the next slide, we go to the next set of rooms that are above the lounge, and those are your conference rooms. And inside your conference rooms, I look at that as maybe the second and third floor of the digital hotel. Here you have a conference room, for example, like a digital technical conference room, or a consumer service conference room, or an internal sales management conference room. And the whole idea is you get a group of people that you invite to that conference room to discuss a topic. And then once you finish discussing the topic, you all go downstairs to the lounge. You have your virtual drink. You might discuss you know, an idea. You might post something, a forum, take a poll, etc. Now above the conference rooms sit your private rooms, and let's just call those, you know, floors 4 to 19 in the hotel. And in the private conference room, that's very important. There's where you invite your customers, and you can do a sales plan. You can review a sales plan on a quarterly basis. You can meet just with the customer, the sales rep, and maybe, you know, somebody, well, let's just say the CEO of the company. But this is an ability, if you will, to come together and one-on-one with your customer and discuss things. And just like any hotel, when you close the door, the digital files go back into their respective drawers, and, you know, you're ready to go downstairs to the lounge and have a drink, a virtual drink, and maybe you know, answer a forum question or answer a poll or post a video or whatever it may be. So the concept behind these digital community is that we can enhance customer engagement by bringing them inside the community. One of the biggest things that we've found values is the lead nurturing. So think about bringing a new customer into a community. They don't really know your company. They don't really want you to tell them how wonderful your product is. They want to listen to other people tell you about your product or service. And so what happens here is, what you can do in digital communities, you can create the digital learning journey of your best customer, of your best distributor, of people that belong to the community. So, you know, what do they do when they go in the community? And that's an indication of the value that they see within the community. And what you do with a new prospect is, when they come into the community, you put them on that digital learning journey. So you might say, welcome to the Mobile Connect community. You know, typically new users like to go to A, B, C, and D. And then they visit A, B, C, and D, but that's all done because that's where your best customers typically visit. And then while they're visiting A, B, C, and D, a prospect can ask questions and talk with their fellow, you know, they could be other oil, lubrication engineers, oil company executives. So a variety of different people belong to the community. But the whole concept is, while people are talking within the community, in this case, Mobile Connect or ExxonMobil is listening to what they say, and that's allowed. You know, you have an agreement that if you're on the community, what you say can be used to help ExxonMobil make better products. So what happens is, when we capture insight from the digital community, we bring it down into the CRM system and pass that as a lead or an opportunity to the sales force. So lead nurturing is very important. Employee collaboration. There's all kinds of wonderful things that happen in communities. Let me go to the next slide, which is the 7th digital technology disruptor. And that's the metaverse, also maybe referred to as the virtual world. And many of you may know it as virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, extended reality. It's a whole bunch of terms that are coming out now. So the question, of course, is what the heck is the metaverse? And I did a survey recently of some executives, and I want to give you quotes that I had. So the metaverse sounds cool, but it's probably way too expensive for us. We don't have that kind of money. Now, these are from executives that don't even know what the metaverse is, but that's okay. The metaverse is too high tech. We have no idea where to start. The metaverse is just another passing fad, where our product industry doesn't have any application or use for the metaverse. You know, I listen to all of these and I start to say, I really answer the question, what the heck is the metaverse? So let me try to define it, and then I'll give you some understandings of it. So the metaverse is really a virtual 3D immersive environment. And what I mean by the word virtual is it's not physically existing, but it's made by software to appear so. So you have this virtual 3D immersive, just means you're inside the environment. So three-dimensional environment where you can now explore virtual worlds. You can meet and communicate with others. You can attend dedicated meetings. You can be creative. You can learn. You can have fun. You can play games. All kinds of stuff is now happening in the metaverse. And, you know, you could say, well, hang on, that's just a gaming, you know, technique or something. It's what people are doing for gaming. It really isn't. In fact, here's some fairly significant forecasts over the next 5 to 10 years. 70% of all brands will be present in the metaverse by 2027. And we're seeing already literally dozens, literally hundreds now of companies that are in the metaverse. 25% of consumers, according to Gartner, will spend 1 hour daily in the metaverse by the year 2026. That's all of us. And if you're a Gen Z, you'll spend about 50% of your time in the metaverse by 2030. Think about that. Users last year in 2021 spent about 110 billion on digital goods, which is, you know, nothing to sneeze at. And this year alone, venture capital has plowed into, has given metaverse more than $10 billion. And that's above and beyond the 80 billion that Microsoft and Meta and others have already committed to the metaverse. So it's something that's not going away, and it's already underway, this paradigm shift. And it's something we should all be present and aware of. Next slide, please. So what are the core metaverse focus areas? Next slide. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm sorry. This is a good one. So that's fine. That's fine. So I mentioned that they'll have this presence. The question I ask you to ask yourself is, if indeed 70% will have their presence in the metaverse, will you be one of the brands that is in the metaverse, or will you be the next Blockbuster or Border or Xerox and arrive late to the party? Will you be disrupted because of the metaverse by companies that basically surpass you because you weren't there to sell and service your customers, or you left them to your competition because they embrace the metaverse and the customers are happy doing business with them? Next slide, please. The areas of greatest importance in the metaverse still at this time are sales, marketing, and customer service. I'll give you an example of each. Field service, I'll give you an example of that. Training, and I'll give you an example of that. And to a certain extent, manufacturing as well. So sales, marketing, customer service. Just for fun, if you've ever tried on Warby Parker glasses, these are glasses that you can virtually try on, W-A-R-B-Y, Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R. And it's a company that decided to really make its presence in a virtual world. And so you try on the glasses, you can see them on your face, you can turn to the side and look at how you look, and you can order right then and there. It's a tremendous value. IKEA, the Swedish furniture store, has an app called Place. And there you can take a room and fill it with furniture and order the furniture right there. IKEA's return on investment is 11-fold on the cost of putting Place into Place, and also and then you know what it versus what it costs them to actually create it. So these are tremendously valuable sales applications. On the marketing side, I always like to use Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is a big manufacturer of many things. But one of the things they're working on is the Orion spacecraft, and that's that goes out to the moon and to Mars and many other areas. So what Lockheed Martin does is when they sell to NASA and the European Space Agency, they show how they build in metaverse technology into their actual product as a way to help make NASA and the European Space Agency feel comfortable that, in this case, Lockheed Martin is on top of their game. And the example would be, when you make a spacecraft, you have to do a lot of rivets. In fact, there's 54,000 rivets on the Orion spacecraft. And in the old days, the way you do it is you would mark it, measure it, and mark it, and then you begin to put your rivets in. Today, you overlay a digital metaverse screen. It's an augmented reality screen on top of the spacecraft, and then you mark exactly where the rivets go. You're basically saving about 90% of the time. An 8-hour shift goes down to about 45 minutes. So there's an example of how Lockheed is using that as a part of their marketing effort to show NASA and the European Space Agency that they're ahead of the game and delivering the best product possible. On the customer service side, there's something called Remote Assist. It's a wonderful tool, and what it is it's and Microsoft HoloLens would be a good example of the devices that would allow you to do that. But Boeing uses it a lot. They may have jets or planes that are located in another country. They have a technical problem. The field service person is having difficulty. They don't know how to solve the problem. And so what they're now doing is they put both of the person, let's just say it's in, I don't know, Brazil. So the person in Brazil puts on the remote assist glasses, and the person in Seattle, Washington at Boeing puts on the remote assist glasses, and they both see the exact same thing. And then they take and overlay exactly what needs to be done to fix the particular problem that the Boeing plane is having. And that's done, in a matter of minutes rather than having to fly somebody out to Brazil to take care of it. On the training side, on the field service side, that's pretty amazing. You can decrease costs up to 75% by using these new metaverse technologies, where both of you see the same thing and can work in unison with remote assist and others. Training, very impressive. A lot of companies now are they're onboarding their employees by first putting them in virtual reality. So take a laboratory, a biology laboratory or a chemical laboratory. They actually put the person in the lab, and then they train them how to use all the equipment, because it's all in 3D. So when they get into the lab on their first day of work, they're perfectly comfortable and at home. And then lots of things are happening in the manufacturing side. But the bottom line is the core metaverse focus areas are sales, marketing, customer service, field service, and training. Let me go to the next slide and close on metaverse. I told you I kind of started this 3 years ago in my journey. And my buddy Tim Baharin and I, Tim's out of the West Coast, Silicon Valley, we created something called the Metaverse Resource Center. It has 120 use cases of companies that are using the metaverse today. And it's broken down by, I think it's 8 industries. So the manufacturing industry, the finance industry, the biology industry, and various different industries. And it shows you companies that are actually using the metaverse today to either increase sales, lower costs, or engage customers more effectively. But that's another digital disruptive technology that I think should be on everybody's radar screen. But most importantly, let me go to the next slide, and it's the one that we're here to really talk about. And that is no code. And Jason did a fine job introducing that. So for me, the whole concept of no code is that we can now extend the application development beyond the IT department. I think Jason kind of alluded to it, freedom for everyone to automate. Technologies and processes and teams get consolidated, they get connected, they're governed as a team, and you can get more done more quickly, more efficiently. Workflow automation, and you'll see it in a minute, and Jason alluded to it already, is done without coding. It's kind of a new concept, but it's very, very powerful. And all that allows you to roll out apps in days or weeks rather than weeks, months, or for that matter, sometimes years. And it's so important that, in fact, the next slide, the Gartner group has said that by 2025, that's 3 years, folks, 70% of all new applications will be developed by enterprises will be using low code or no code technologies, up from less than 25% just 2 years ago. So this is taking the market by storm. I have to tell you a funny story. One of my customers is a blueberry plant producer. So they grow in their nurseries and create all different types of blueberry plants, and very tasty blueberries, I might add. And the new CIO, who's a wonderful guy and a friend of mine, he came into the company and he looked at kind of how the company was set up, and it's been growing so fast because blueberries are very tasty and a lot of people like them, and it's a smart food. So people are, the company's really growing very, very, very quickly and globally. So he looked at some of the processes in the company, and quite frankly, they were broken. A lot of them were not optimal. They just hadn't grown as quickly as the company had grown. And so he kind of said for 2022, I think it was, or maybe I think it was 2022, that he was going to spend much of the year really redoing the processes. And you think about that, and you think about spending a year to redo processes, and then you think about no code, and you think about what we talked about just a moment ago. Workflow automation is done without coding. And I had a good chat with my buddy Nathan, and we were under discussions of how he could use low code and no code in all of the applications going forward. So let's go to the next slide. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Creatio, which Jason has already talked about, who's the organizer of this particular webinar, the leading role that Creatio is playing in driving the no-code industry. And now, that's a big statement. They talk about one platform, and that's for CRM and industrial workflows and templates and connectors. They talk about the freedom to own your automation. And they talk about genuine care, that every step of the way, they're there to help you in what you're doing. And I've been privy to Creatio for many years. I kind of watched them grow up from a very smaller company through various rounds of venture capital and otherwise. It's a great company. I really believe in Creatio. They don't pay me to say that. It's a really good company, and they're really leading the way in this no code. And Jason talked about this new, I think it's a book that they're actually putting out and how to achieve that. I would strongly encourage you, particularly the 88% that said your company is going to be using no code, to listen to that. I think there's a lot to be learned, but it's a wonderful opportunity to leverage the tool set of Creatio and their new Creatio 8 Atlas version and really leverage no code. So where do you use it? And the vision of Creatio is really on everybody as a developer with no code. Now, folks, you could argue, everybody really? Well, what it means is we don't have to depend upon the IT department who may be backlogged 6 months or 2 months or 2 weeks or whatever to get to a particular app. That everybody can play a role in creating basic workflows and creating user interfaces. And I mean, you have to, particularly those that are customers of Creatio, you'll know what I'm talking about. And for those that are not customers, just get a demo, get a 1-hour demo. Tell them to onboard somebody from scratch. I mean, I watched it at one of their conferences, and they started with an understanding of who is the segment and how do they onboard and what's the process and where do you have to go in the database and how do they then take their first step inside the application. And the whole thing was done in an hour. It just blew my mind. So whether it's customer engagement apps or automated workflows, whether it's data processing and productivity apps, whether it's creating UI and data models and business logic, whether it's applying AI and machine learning powered apps or creating those apps, whether it's customizable digital workspaces, all of this is within the current Creatio 8 Atlas offering. Let me go to the next slide, because this is the one that kind of pulls it all together for me. So this is, I don't think Jason really covered this in great detail. I'm not going to either, but this is what really turns me on. So you have 3 core components to the Creatio no code offering. You have an application hub, and in the application hub, you have lots of different applications. They've got like a library of applications, if you want to call it that. Then you have a no code designer. So that allows you to design screens and applications using no code. I mean, it sounds really weird, but that's what it is. And then you have a freedom UI designer to make everything look beautiful, to create reports, and to make sure that you're able to monitor what you're doing. Well, between the application hub, which has pre-packaged apps in a variety of different sales, marketing, customer service, industry, I think there's 20 industries is what they have for application hub. And then the no code designer, where you can actually design things, and then the UI designer to make things look pretty and be able to do reports and make it attractive. That alone is very powerful. But then you add into it the Studio Creatio, which is their core tool set to create workflow automation. And again, using no code. And here you have like a powerful set of tools. The only way I look at this, you can go to the next slide. The only way I look at this is I wonder if Creatio, in fact, has created what I call the Lego plug and play. And let me tell you why I'm saying that. I'm going to put up some Lego here. About 30 years ago, I actually got involved in funding an app for somebody, a couple of friends of mine. And the whole concept was Lego building blocks. And the concept was we could take an app and we could simply plug it into the Lego base plate, and we could then have an app that would allow us to achieve what we were trying. And that was the whole concept of Lego plug and play. And it would be my observation that I humbly submit that Creatio is pretty close to finally achieving Lego plug and play with their either the actual application hub, with the no-code designer, with the Freedom UI designer, or with what they call Studio Creatio, which is their workflow toolset. And what all this allows companies to do is to deliver uber personalized experiences, because screens can be personalized and workflows can be personalized. It allows you to run invisible and seamless processes. So all this stuff happens behind the scenes. You don't actually have to be involved in the process flow. It happens to you automatically. It allows you to consolidate and integrate applications so that it's not an awkward thing where you have to leave one application and go to another application or come back to the application. It's all kind of done in a seamless and consolidated and integrated manner. And again, what it allows us to do is to change and innovate faster. And guess what? Changing and innovating faster is what digital disruption is all about. It's what the idea is, that I alluded to earlier on today, to maximize that whole area of thriving in a world of digital disruption. So now let me come to the title of this presentation. If you remember, the title was How to Maximize the Impact of Digital Process Automation on Your Go-to-Market Strategy. And what I said is that I would come back to this because we really haven't defined digital process automation. But for the purpose of this discussion, and we could get into much more detail, I'm not going to, think of it as an evolution of BPM, so business process management, that delivers better managed processes. It's kind of the next evolution, the next step, the next level of BPM. There's a few other things that are in there, but it's basically better managed processes. And what DPA, digital process automation, does, DPA leverages low-code and no-code development tools like those offered by Creatio 8 Atlas to automate processes and optimize workflows. So it should come as no surprise when I tell you that Creatio 8 provides advanced DPA tools. It's not just their BPM, there's a bunch of other tools that they've built in so that you can now deliver better managed processes and begin to address what is this digital disruption and begin to address how to go to market with a more enhanced digital capability, which is the final point on this slide, which is a very important one for me anyhow, that digital process automation may be the single greatest strategy and tool set to help companies achieve digital disruption. So the title of this speech was How to Maximize the Impact of Digital Process Automation on Your Go-to-Market Strategy. Well, it's best leveraged by using the low-code, no-code tool sets of Creatio and that type of tool set, and helping you apply that in your digital disruption through processes and technologies so that you become the next Uber, or you become the next Netflix, or you don't become the next Xerox or Borders or those types of companies. So that's what the connection is with digital process automation. Next slide, Jason. So let me make a couple of summaries. I suggested to you today that there are 8 digital technology disruptors. And this is something that we all have to learn to understand so that we can thrive in a world of digital disruption. These aren't going away. They're here today and will become ever more present tomorrow. So our job, if you will, is to understand how they work, how we apply them, and how we can then become our own digital disruptors and retain and grow our market share and remain competitive in a particular marketplace. Next slide. So how do you maximize the impact of digital process automation on your go-to-market strategy? I think we have to acknowledge a couple of things. Disruption occurs in every single industry. That 50% of the S&P will be replaced by 2030 is a sufficient warning, if you will, that you can't duck disruption. And digital disruptors, some of the 8 technologies that I talked about, are here to, to stay. So we just have to learn how to work with them. Now, I also mentioned that you must transform your companies to stay in the game. And here again is where technology plays a critical role to help you transform. Last slide, please. So again, how to maximize the impact of digital process automation on your go-to-market strategy. I think that, as I alluded to, the digital process automation leverages no-code technologies. It helps businesses better navigate digital disruption and create more efficient and likely to succeed go-to-market strategies. That's kind of my answer to the question, how do we maximize it? Let me just close by saying that I'm delighted to have the opportunity to chat with you. I'm completely open to questions from the audience and also from any of my friends at Creatio. So thank you, and I'll open it to the floor, Jason, to any questions and answers that we may have.
Yeah, and I know we've got a few folks who raised their hand throughout, and we'll get to those folks. I do encourage folks to put their questions into the questions section on your go-to-market. You can find that in your right side panel there. We'll make sure we get those answered. For the first couple of questions I do have, what's one of the most innovative companies that you've ever seen or ever worked with?
Yeah, I mean, I almost could go back to some of the ones I showed you, but I'll tell you the one that I've worked with personally. And that is Nike, the company Nike. You know, there was an expression years ago, you saw it in their advertising campaigns. It said, "Just do it." And you know, you thought, isn't that a bit of a silly logo or slogan? But that's how the company worked internally. So what they said is, if you have an idea, if you have a technology, if you have a better process, if you have a better way to train or educate people, just do it. And what happened is it revolutionized the way Nike adopted change. So, you know, a lot of companies are hesitant to make change, but Nike embraces change. And we always talk in Nike about getting to the next level. So raising the bar is the exact words. And the concept is, if we can do something better, let's just do it. But if we can raise the bar, let's do it again. And I've had the pleasure of working with Nike over a number of years. I consider them certainly one of the most innovative companies with new ideas of how they go to market and their own products, et cetera. But one would be remiss not to point out Tesla. Now, I've worked peripherally with them. You know, you have a company that has 97% customer satisfaction with these cars. You have a company, if you don't know the history of this, where Elon Musk and his CTO sat down in University Avenue in Palo Alto at the Swenson's ice cream store, for those that know it. And they watched all the cars going up and down University Avenue to Stanford University and into Palo Alto. And they said, man, look at all these moving parts in these cars. What if we could cut out half the parts and really make it simple, like put a big base that had the power, we'll call those batteries, we put on 4 tires and a steering wheel, and for the most part, the rest of it would be done with software. So, you know, that was like a wild ass idea. And that is today, you know, one of the most successful manufacturing companies, automotive companies in the world. And here's what I think is impressive about Tesla. They literally live in the shoes of their customers. So when they first started to offer charging stations around this country and elsewhere, they offered them free of charge. And the reason was they wanted to learn, when did their customers, you know, gas up, to use an old term, or charge up, and to use a new term, and how many miles did they travel between the last charge and this charge, and what was the weather like, and so forth. So they began to really understand their customers and their customer patterns. But they also gave their customers the ability to tweak various settings in the software, for example, for suspension, or for, I mean, even, you know, if it rains a lot where you live, that your windshield wipers come on automatically. So it gave the customer a part of being, it gave them the opportunity to be a part of the product itself. And that's what's driven Tesla to this high level of customer satisfaction. So, Jason, there are many. I gave you just, by the way, Apple's another one. The reason I say Apple is today, you're going to hear some very, very impressive announcements. They were made to a limited group of analysts yesterday. So I got the scoop on a couple of my, we're all under mum, as we say, to say anything, but you're going to be very impressed. And if we talk about the Metaverse, it's my observation that Meta put in $10 billion commitment to the Metaverse. They've created the Quest Oculus headsets. You know, lots of companies have come in with their own product offering, the HoloLens by Microsoft, the Lenovo's come in with the Think 3, but the one that's going to really revolutionize the metaverse is going to be Apple. And the reason is, just like they revolutionized the watches that we wear, and just like they revolutionized the smartphones, and just like they revolutionized the tablets, they're going to come in next year with a headset. We're not sure if it's going to be goggles or a headset. We'll find out this afternoon. But and that's going to revolutionize. It's going to bring the metaverse to the masses. And we're going to find that it's going to be not just kids playing games or young adults playing games, but it's actually businessmen and women that are applying this technology to sales, marketing, customer service, training, field service, etc. So I hope that answered a couple of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have a few folks who raised their hand throughout the presentation, and I'm going to work my way through it. Matthias, I'm going to unmute you here. If you want to go ahead and ask your question, happy to answer it. Matthias, are you out there? Looks like just as I was going to Matthias dropped. Okay. I believe Aziz. Let me see if Aziz is still out here. Aziz, you had a question. Aziz, can you ask your question, please? Okay. Looks like Aziz, maybe his microphone's not working, so we'll go ahead and put him back on mute. We did have another question. I think I had another hand raised here. Well, looks like maybe that person might have dropped off. So we'll go ahead and I've got a few other questions for you. So what's one of the biggest challenges that you see in companies becoming a digital disruptor?
That's a great question. And it's a very important question. I'll give you my short list, and you make of it what you think. The most important thing is, I think, challenges executive skepticism. They ask the question, why disrupt? It's going to increase the likelihood of failure. They're proud. We've done it this way successfully for many years. Why rock the boat? And what companies don't realize, I mean this, is what happened to Kodak, or what happened to Blockbusters, or what happened to the yellow taxis, or what happened to the digital cameras. And companies just don't understand the impact that this digital disruption can have on them. And it's really it's a big challenge to overcome the skepticism that the executives are going to ask, why disrupt? It'll fail. We've done it successfully years. There's another thing that I think another challenge might be that disruption comes in low on the prioritization list. So companies typically get stuck, doing what they need to do today and tomorrow. They're just looking at the end of their nose. And so they're really micro-focused. Whereas, and I remember this at AT&T, it was a customer back in I guess it was the 90s, even late 80s. But anyhow, so AT&T was a great company, still is. But they were the founders of Bell Laboratories. Bell Laboratories was the very, very advanced thinking laboratory for all of networking and telephones and everything. And I remember we were in Baskin Ridge, New Jersey, which was corporate headquarters, inside Bell Labs. It was an amazing innovation place. And somebody brought up this company called Cisco, C-I-S-C-O. And I remember the executive saying, yeah, we've actually heard about it. They got little products, but if they get too big or anything, we'll just squash them. We'll step on them and buy them. Well, Cisco had a very clever strategy that didn't allow them to be bought. And they kept chipping away at the legs of AT&T. And basically, they brought down Bell Labs. I mean, not completely, but to a large extent. And so the issue then becomes, disruption. Where does it sit on the priority list? For those companies that see it sitting too low, by the time you wake up to what's going on, you can find your legs chopped off, and you're no longer AT&T, Bell Labs. Cisco's taken over the marketplace. So that's just, one example. I often think about the impact, and you may like or dislike Amazon. It's not the point that I'm going to raise here. But if you think about how they're using technology and how they were able to move from a bookstore, basically, to a behemoth retail store, and the use of technology and how much disruption that placed on so many of, whether it's the Borders books, but equally important, other such industries. And that's another example of why disruption should be at a higher list, higher on the list of prioritization. I think that another challenge, Jason, is securing executive sponsors with a budget. So typically in a digital disruption scenario, you need one, we'll call it an executive sponsor, that says, I don't care what everybody says. This is my baby. I'm going to make it happen. I'm taking it under my wing. I'm going to clear the, the politics or the bureaucracy that gets in the way. I've got the budget, and let's move forward. And that was the case for a buddy of mine, Ian Davis, who was the founder of the Mobile Connect digital community. And I remember when I worked with Ian, this is years ago, and he said, Bart, he was a Scotsman. He loved football, European football, and he was an Arsenal fan. And he was always overwhelmed at how they were able to create these communities, and they could all come together, Arsenal, and all be happy, and they learned so much from each other. And he said, why can't we do that at ExxonMobil? And I said, we can. So he really heralded this effort and created it with a budget. I remember it was $300,000 at the time. And today it's a very important part of how they do their digital marketing and lead management and lead nurturing. So it's just an example of securing an executive with a budget. I also think that one of the challenges is identifying a powerful use case. So what I mean by that is you really have to think, if we're going to go into disruption, what is it that's going to really drive the customer to buy the product or service that we're disrupting, and have a use case that's very powerful that we can attach revenue, expectation to it, cost, and measure it and monitor it throughout the history of that particular offering. I think that another one is a challenge is having a solid tool set. I think there's lots of tool sets out there. Again, I'm not paid by Creatio to say these things, but for those that are not actively involved in Creatio 8 Atlas, you got to look at this tool set. I mean, the platform is there. It's a leap forward, their new platform. So I think that one of the challenges might be having a solid tool set, but Creatio 8 Atlas is doing a great job at closing that particular challenge. And then I think another one might be having like an effective communication plan. In any technology change, 50% is on the people side. Back in 1986, I wrote the people, process, technology paradigm mix, and I said for any technology initiative, 50% is about people and change management, organizational readiness. 30% is about business process improvement, and 20% is about technology. Well, one of the challenges in digital disruption, and for that matter, digital transformation, and for that matter, using DPA, effectively, is to get people to buy into it. And so one of the things is to get people to buy into using these new technologies, to using no code, to extending, applications outside of the IT department, is to communicate effectively. And that's really important, and most companies don't do it as effectively as they should. So that's just kind of some of the challenges that come to my mind, Jason.
Yeah, you hit on a bunch of key points there, and we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left here, and I kind of want to give you my thought on just 1 or 2 things and see where you stand on this one. So obviously, you talked about having an executive sponsor, having someone with a vision, having someone with a budget. What we find just in our interaction with customers is that budgets are shrinking. Budgets are getting tighter. The priorities are so piled up in a backlog, it makes it hard to wean those out. One of the things that we think about when we're talking with customers from a consulting standpoint is, and this is where I think it gets into the power of no code, is without the need for an army of developers, the ability to get things out to market, your speed to market, becomes quicker by leveraging things like no code technologies. These to me are a couple of the key points to be talking to those executives about, because when they think about it, it's like, especially if it's a publicly traded company, they're thinking about return on investment. They're thinking about value to their shareholders. And obviously, even we run into this in the pub sector too, or in the charitable space. Every dollar they spend is not something that's going back to the charity, not going back to the stakeholders, whatever it be. So do you see, my question then, do you see no code really being a driver for change and a more effective way for those executives to help get their initiatives over the line?
So the answer is absolutely yes. I really do, because I've seen it in action and I love it. And boy, it could save so much time for companies to bring product to market more quickly, effectively, and so forth. But the challenge is not with the value of no code. The challenge is with getting executives to focus on the value of no code. And I kind of always think about 3 ways to get it to move an executive. One is you've got what I'd like to call a creative executive, an executive that feels it's their job to always be on the forefront of the next step. So to be the digital disruptor. And so they're always looking for the next tool set or next set of tools or the next whatever that'll help them realize that vision. So that's one type of an executive. There's, they don't come, there's not a lot of them, but the ones that are good, are the ones that will drive the no code push. The second way you can bring about move an executive is through competition. So I do remember distinctly, AT&T was literally freaking out about 6 or 12 months after the initial discussion of we'll squash them and just buy them if they get big enough, because they weren't viable and they were much bigger. And so, when competition is out there trying to, really taking market share and bringing product to market faster, that can really get the attention of an executive. There's another way to get an executive's attention, that's through education. It's a slower process, but that's where you are educating the executive of, let me show you how to create a digital workflow without, with code, or low code. Let me show you how to do it with no code, and really just educate them. So that's another way to help bring them along. It's a slower process, but that's also can be an effective way. And if all those fail, the one way that I've always found to be successful is get all the influencers of the executive, the people that the executives listen to, and convince them of the value of, in this case, no code, and have them tell the boss, hey, listen, we really got to do no code. And he'll come back and won't even realize why he's saying it, but he'll say, we really got to do no code. So there's a way to.
I agree 100%, Barton, and we are just about out of time here, but you absolutely just answered a question that just came in from Pradeep. And absolutely, I think that having those executive and those subject matter experts understand the power of no code is the greatest way to help drive some of that transformation, because those subject matter experts, by using no code technology, get to play in the process. You're not just taking requirements and throwing them over the wall to the folks that are on the IT side and hoping that something sticks. I do again hope that that folks have enjoyed today's program. As a reminder, hopefully you can see my screen again. Please click on that QR code. Join us October 4th for our conversation with Steve Wozniak. And Barton, I greatly appreciate your time today. Thank you so very much. It's always insightful to have you on, and we appreciate the time. We'll talk to everybody again soon. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks, Jason. Goodbye now.